Catheter-associated urinary tract infections remain a top patient safety concern that has the potential to create increased morbidity and mortality in patients and increased financial burdens on the healthcare system as a whole. Efforts to decrease the incidence of CAUTIs nationwide include making CAUTI reduction a national patient safety goal by the United States Department of Health and Human Services, as well as placing financial penalties on hospitals for poor CAUTI performance by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. More than 75% of CAUTIs are caused by indwelling urinary catheters, and as we know, several measures can be taken to avoid these infections. Each CAUTI is associated with a medical cost averaging about $758. The overarching goal is to minimize the length of time that catheters are inserted for and to decrease their overall use. Translating these infection prevention efforts to the bedside setting has proven to be effective through the use of peer-to-peer nurse-led educational initiatives. In order to successfully engage the primary providers who insert and assess indwelling catheters on a daily basis, creative strategies often have to be used. When nurses themselves are responsible for the prevention efforts and are able to hold each other accountable through structural empowerment, there is an increased level of motivation for infection prevention. The purpose of this video is to create a checklist for you to be able to implement our educational program on your unit and identify the necessary staff for successful completion.
Hello and welcome, nurses. Today we're going to cover the importance of reducing catheter-associated urinary tract infections and how to implement a program on your units to prevent them. Who here can define a CAUTI for me?
I can. So a CAUTI is a catheter-associated UTI, and it happens when a catheter is in place for too long. And indwelling urinary catheters and bladder instrumentation are like the only causes of a CAUTI in a hospital.
Good. So CAUTIs are actually the fifth most common type of healthcare-associated infection. Each day that an indwelling catheter remains in place, a patient has a 3 to 7% chance increase for developing a CAUTI. They can lead to serious complications and even death, and length of stay can increase as well as cost to the hospital. So I know that CAUTIs can sometimes seem out of our control when it comes to how often they stay in place in our patients, and some of you may be wondering what role you can take to reduce their prevalence. Is anyone aware of steps currently that you can do to reduce CAUTI incidence on your unit?
I think that there is a type of external female catheter, I think called the Purewick. I've had some success with this product, using it on my patients in the unit.
Yes, definitely. Purewicks are an external female catheter device that collects urine by being connected to wall suction. We can also use the method of question the Foley and a few others that we'll discuss today that we'll start implementing during this program. So when caring for patients with an indwelling catheter, it's important that we assess the patient's need for the catheter first. So we can do, like I mentioned, the evidence-based criteria, question the Foley. This framework has a list of questions that nurses can run through daily to see whether continuation of a Foley is necessary. I made copies of this framework that you can all take home with you today to run through. Does anyone else know another way that we could maybe reduce CAUTIs on our floor?
I think that performing hand hygiene often, as well as catheter care, can reduce prevalence of infection and then prolonged use of catheters.
Yeah, definitely. It's important to perform hand hygiene, and catheter care also involves wearing gloves, performing peri-care with soap and water, emptying the Foley bag when it's full, keeping the drainage bag below the level of the bladder, and making sure that the catheter tube is not kinked and that it's draining properly. You all play a very important role in decreasing CAUTI rates just by feeling empowered to question a provider's order to insert the Foley initially. You can also request removal if your judgment says that it's applicable. My hope is that our unit continues to educate ourselves and receive peer-led educational programs weekly. These will be led by your fellow nurses on the floor and yourselves. You all will have the opportunity to audit one another as well with your patients that have Foleys. So you'll grab a friend and go visit your patients and analyze each other's evaluation of whether or not your patients still need their Foley. Does this sound like something you're all motivated to do? Do we think we can all work as a team and get our physicians on board and our OTs and
Yeah, I think
for
it sounds
sure.
great.
definitely. The time frame I had in mind is 9 full months of implementing the program. Our goal is to decrease our overall CODI rates on this floor by 50% at the end of the 9 months. And if this sounds achievable to everyone and our whole unit of nurses agrees, what I'll do is create a board this evening to display the charting room, and we'll keep a track record of how often we have CODIs on the floor and sort of keep ourselves motivated with data to keep reducing CODI rates.
How's your patient?
Hey, my patient's pretty good. I do think that they might need a Foley though. I was wondering if you could come in the room with me. I think this would be a great opportunity for you to audit this for our new program. What do you think?
Definitely, I'll definitely come in with you, but before we even do that, did you run through the question of Foley criteria?
I didn't. Can we go over that?
Yeah, absolutely.
When going through the question of Foley criteria, it's important to ask 1. If it's being used to provide bladder irrigation and or to instill medication. 2. To provide relief from urinary tract obstruction not manageable by other means. 3. To permit urine drainage in a patient with neurogenic bladder dysfunction, hydronephrosis, or urinary retention not manageable by other means. 4. To obtain accurate intake and output in critically ill patients. 5. Aid in urologic surgery or other surgery in the contiguous area, GYN or lower GI surgery. 6. To manage urinary issues or special purposes circumstances such as difficult insertion per the urologist. 7. To manage urinary incontinence in patients with stage 3 or stage 4 pressure ulcers. Or 8. To provide comfort care in terminally ill or hospice patients. If the patient meets none of the criteria above, the registered nurse will contact the physician and discuss the possibility of either catheter removal or not putting one in at all.
A major goal for this educational program is to empower nurses to educate other members of the interdisciplinary team by referencing evidence of the program's success towards quality and safe patient outcomes. The objective is to collaborate and share pilot unit feedback through weekly interdisciplinary care rounds, helping to modify the strategy in order to ultimately implement the program on other units. This will ultimately lead to nurses feeling more confident in their communication with providers in order to advocate for safe Foley practices with their patients.